So there's going to be a lot of discussions. So hello viewers, this is Tony Gehi again, and welcome to live on Zoom. So this is a live show, and if you have any questions, the rules are pretty simple. You can Zoom us and ask your questions, and the question and answer session for all the types of visas is going to be beginning at I would say at 6:15. So this is an early show now. So just a reminder to my viewers, the shows are going to be beginning at 6 p.m. every Wednesday until 6:30 p.m. So this is because of the demand from viewers that they wanted the show to be a little early. And also since offices have started, we've been trying to keep the show a little early for the benefit of our viewers. So today's show is going to be about religious workers. And there are a lot of religious workers internationally, and they've asked us to basically speak about this visa category, which is not discussed a whole lot. Yes, at Gay and Associates, we do handle religious worker visas, and religious workers are people who work in a religious capacity, and they work in churches, they work in mosques, they work in gurudwaras, they work in temples, synagogues, etc. So besides that, also a few rules for the show is that you can ask any question you want that relates to immigration, and you can ask the question from anywhere in the US. Feel free to kind of distribute this video. And remember, the show timings have changed, and the show timings are going to be every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll be taking your questions, we'll be answering them. Now, people have been asking me a lot of questions. What's the best way to ask a question? During the show, you can press this particular button, which is known as a chat switch, and you can use the chat button to ask me questions. If you're on Facebook or if you are on YouTube, or the best thing is to actually come on Zoom and ask me the question live, and you can raise your hand, and the administrators will allow you to ask us some questions. So that's exactly how the show would kind of commence. And yes, some other questions that I need to answer. What's the best way to reach us? It's info@gehilaw.com. So since it's getting to 6 p.m., I'm getting ready to kind of get ready for the show. So it's info@gehilaw.com, and you can call us. And yes, the office is open now. So the good news is that you can start making appointments from next week. So the good news is it's no more remote. New York is allowing us to see people. You can call us, make an appointment, and I'll be happy to see you. And my staff members will be happy to see you if you have any questions. So we handle cases from all over the US and the world. So even if you're coming from another state, you can drive, you can come in and see us. We can also start your cases on the phone. A lot of people have been actually remotely starting their cases, especially when it comes to H-1Bs, green card processing for family members and for spouses. So yes, folks, let's start with religious workers. At 6 p.m., time to begin with religious workers. What is a religious worker? A religious worker is a person who generally works in a religious organization. Religious worker does not mean that the person has to be a priest. He can be a member of the clergy. He can be someone who's directly involved in the church, or he can be a minister in the church. He can be a priest. Then he can be like someone who does a lot of directly related religious work within a synagogue, a temple, a mosque, or a church, or any other religious organization. So most people ask that, is it important for a person to have a degree? It always helps to have a degree in the religious vocation. But what happens if you don't have a degree? If you don't have a degree, you can show that you have an ordination certificate, means you are a real religious minister. For example, you've undergone religious studies, you're well versed with basically the Torah, you're very well versed with the Quran, and you've actually worked in that particular organization as a religious worker. So I know people are raising their hands. We'll be taking the questions at 6:15. So right now, let's finish the discussion. I will be happy to take the questions later. Dave, hold on. I'll definitely take your question. So the question here is that who's a religious worker? A person who's a minister, who's someone who's working in a religious organization, and he's a member of the clergy, or someone who is actually kind of a religious teacher. Or in case of a gurudwara, it can also be a person who can be a cook, because he's cooking for the benefit of the people or, in that particular religious organization. So now, one of the most important matter, which is a concern for immigration, that we're having some connectivity issues because of the weather, and I think Zoom is acting up. So my apologies. So we are back on the topic, and if we get disconnected, we'll be back soon. It's raining heavily over here, so we can expect some disconnection issues, and my apologies for that. So we are talking about religious workers. Who's a religious worker? A religious worker is a person who works in a religious denomination. Someone who is in a religious denomination. The best example is a priest, a pastor, then you're looking at a member of the clergy. So people who work in a religious organization and who have devoted their life towards religion can best be described as religious workers. So for example, let's take an example that if you're a priest right now, and you're working as a priest, you're a nun, and you're watching the show, that's the best person who can think about a religious worker. So now, what do workers have to do? They should have worked in that particular religious denomination for a period of 2 years, full time. You should show that you're a member of the clergy, you're a priest, or you're a minister, or you are performing religious services within that organization. So take an example, you are watching the show right now in Italy, or if you're watching the show in Africa, if you're affiliated with the church right now in New Zealand or in any country in the world, or even if you're in the temple or if you're in a mosque, first thing you need to make sure is that whether you worked there for a period of 2 years. If you've been there for more than 2 years, excellent. Then after that, you need to make sure that you are going to come to America and you'll be working in the same denomination. If you're a member of the Methodist Church, you're going to come to a Methodist Church over here. Well, that is the same denomination. So the same denomination is very important. And besides that, you also need to make sure that your purpose is going to be performing religious services. So you're going to perform religious related services when you come to the United States of America. When you come here, you're going to perform those services. So take an example about, a preacher, like who is preaching about the gospel of God. He says that I'm going to come to America and I'm going to come to the Baptist church in America and I'm going to talk about Jesus, and we're going to talk about Bethlehem, the birth of Jesus Christ, and whether Jesus was the Son of God as an example. And so if you want to preach about that and you really spent your entire life being a religious expert, and if you're affiliated to a church full time, that is fantastic. So you need to make sure that a Baptist church, which has a relationship with the church, should sponsor you. So what happens is that when they sponsor you, then the way it works is that, the law firm prepares the paperwork, and after the paperwork is prepared, then after that, that paperwork is taken by the religious worker who's in a foreign country to the consulate officer. So then the consulate officer is going to check a few things. They want to make sure that your purpose is bona fide, and they can check your ordination certificate. If you're a Qazi or a Mullah, he's going to make sure that you are actually a Qazi or a Mullah, and whether you're well read with the Quran. And if you practice Hinduism, they want to see that you're a Pandit, or if you're a priest or whatnot, to make sure that you have the qualifications. Most importantly, they want to see that you've worked there for more than 2 years. And the more you work, the better it is. And they will also call up the local temple or the local church where you're working to make sure that you are actually a religious worker. So after they make sure that you're a religious worker, what's the next thing that happens? They want to make sure that the church or the temple or the mosque, or basically, the Gurudwara that you're going to work in the United States of America, whether that's a not-for-profit religious organization. So which means that if I start a church today and if I'm making a profit, the bottom line is that you won't get the visa because it's not a not-for-profit. And it should basically further the religious cause. So that is very important. So therefore, the consulate officer does a very thorough screening of those people who are coming to America. They want to make sure that they have the right people coming to America. The right visas are given to these people. Now, the most common question which I get is, Mr. Gehi, how long is the religious worker visa valid for? The religious worker visa can be valid for up to 5 years. So which means that the good thing is that initially you get your 2 years, you can extend the visa for a period of 3 years. So now what happens if you're already in America? You can also change your status in this country, but make sure that you have enough proof to show that you have worked in a religious denomination abroad for the past 2 years. They also look at the continuity. So which means that if you left that particular mosque, or if you left the temple, or if you left the Gurudwara, or if you left that particular religious organization, the USCIS looks at the gaps over here. So if there's no gap, you're well and fine. But if the gap is pretty big, you can look into problems out there. So that is critically important for you to know. The other question which I get, Mr. K, what is the importance of the salary that a religious worker has to get? You can get nominal salaries, which means like, something to show that you're going to sustain a living. You're going to basically make sure that they give you something, and you should pay your taxes when you get a religious worker visa, because they want to make sure that whether you're actually working, how you're getting paid, whether the organization is going to be providing you with food, clothing, and shelter. So that is critically important, because I've done a lot of religious visas over the years, and the critical question which I get from immigration is, how is this person going to live? Where is he going to live? Whether he's going to be given food, whether he's going to be given clothing, he's going to be given shelter, and how his basic needs going to be kind of met. You don't have to show a very high salary like 100,000 salary. That's not required. You need to show that you should be able to survive in the United States of America. Now, what happens with the religious workers I've seen is that even when they come over here, immigration likes to come and pay a visit to the church to make sure whether it's a genuine church, whether he's actually performing the duties. That is very, very important when you're handling religious worker visas. These visas are not easy, especially because the lawyer who is doing this job has to know what immigration will be looking at. So then there are some religious workers who don't get married, like nuns, etc. Fathers, they don't. So in those cases, what they can do is after some time, if they want to live in America, they can also plan the green card. So we have to show that he worked for the religious denomination over here for some time, and after he's been working here, is performing his duties as a pastor, or as a priest, or as a religious teacher. That is very important. And then if he remains legal in the country, so if he's on an R1 visa, and if he maintained his status, and the organization is continuing to kind of employ him as a religious worker, then he can also think about his green card. So the way it works is that first we have to file an immigrant visa petition for the priest. And once the immigrant visa petition is approved, then after that, the priest can get his green card. Now, what do most priests do? Some of them wait until the 5-year period. I don't think so that's a good idea. But some of them, what they do after 1 year they've been in this country, they start planning their green cards. They send me an email stating that, Mr. K, we own, and a lot of people who contact me are actually the presidents of temples, presidents of churches, presidents of gurudwaras, presidents of other religious organizations who want to sponsor someone to come to America, or they want to sponsor someone for a green card. Now, this is very important when it comes to R1 visas. Now, what is the good thing about an R1 visa? You're not bound by the prevailing wages. Like people think, oh my God, I have to get $50,000. The answer is no. You are a priest. You're supposed to make a living. As far as you can make a living, you are fine. Now, people ask me, what about family members? Yes, you're allowed to bring your spouse. You're allowed to bring your spouse. You're allowed to bring your children under the age of 21. But remember, the big distinction here is that your spouse and your children cannot work in the United States until they get work authorization from a different category. So take an example. You're here as a priest. Your wife comes here, and you have 2 children, and they're under the age of 21. They can come in and join you. Well and good, they are over here. Now, what's the next thing that we need to do? They're here. They can go to school. Children can go to school. As far as the parents are concerned, the mother's concerned, for example, who's here on a dependent visa. Let's talk about the mother. I'm just taking an example. The mother cannot work. So now what should the priest do? He should perform in the religious organization. After he continues to perform properly, the next thing he needs to do is to get in touch with the president of that particular religious organization. And then after that, the president will have questions. And then they can kind of email us and we can talk to the president whether he wants to sponsor, and we can let them know what is really required. The other question which I get from a lot of priests who are abroad is that, Mr. Gehi, my church in America wants to sponsor me. My temple is ready to sponsor me. How do I initiate the conversation? I know that's a hard job. There's an easy way to initiate the conversation, is to email me. But make sure that you are having the credentials. You're a bona fide priest. Otherwise, I will not even touch your case. I want to make sure that you have the credentials as a priest. You're qualified and you're working for a bona fide religious organization in your country. And then the next thing you need to tell me in the email is, Mr. Gehi, I have a church in America, and that is a part of the same denomination. Same denomination means it's a similar church. For example, if you're working in a Hindu temple, and if you're talking with Lord Shiva, and if you're going to go to a Hindu temple, you're well and good because you have the education, or that you're well read with the Bhagavad Gita. And if you are a Muslim, and if you're a Qazi or a Mullah, you're very well read with the Quran, and you know about what a Sunni prayer is. And if you're a Shia, you should know about your Shia prayers as a Muslim preacher. And if you're a Christian, you need to know the Bible from the back of your head. And if you are a Sikh, you have to know your Gurbani very well. So these things are very important, because especially when you go for the interview, the consulate officer can ask you any question. He wants to make sure that you are genuine. So now what happens with the children and what happens to the spouse? They can come to America, they can live with you, they can travel back and forth if they came in on a visa as an R1 visa, as a beneficiary of an R1, which is an R2 visa holder. If they have a multiple entry, they can travel. But what happens when you change your status in the United States? That's an issue. Because now, if you change your status here, because you came in on a B1 or a B2, you came in on a student visa, now you change. Yes, you can work in America, but the issue is that you'll have to go back to your country for a stamping if you want to travel. So these are very critically important issues when it comes to R1 visas and R2 visas. Now, what happens with a lot of people who watch the show? Now, there are some R1 religious workers, they may be watching the show in America. Some of them will be watching the show abroad. So what do? People who are here, if they'd applied for the change of status, and they get an RFE sometimes, request for evidence, that you don't have enough proofs to show that you're a religious worker. It's not a not-for-profit organization. Be careful, because you have to know the law. The lawyer handling the case on religious workers has to know the law. He has to know what documents are required. That is going to be very, very important for you. So I know people are raising their hands, and in 5 minutes from now, we'll be taking questions. So this is important for religious workers. So now when it comes to religious workers, now you came here, initially got your 2 years, and you proved it to the consulate officer when you change your status. You showed them you have the qualifications. You're a high priest. You showed them you've been great. What about people who are teachers? Even religious teachers are eligible for this category. You need to show that you have the qualifications. You need to show that you worked 2 years and you are maintaining that continuity. Means, for example, today if I'm working in a church and I'm the pastor of the church, now after that I left the job, and after that I started my business and I started selling softwares. I don't have that continuity right now. I cannot come to America and tell them, hey, listen, I want to join your church right now. Immigration is going to look at the gaps. That is very important. Now, when you are applying for your green card, at that time, they want to see whether you have all your pay stubs in order. They want to make sure that you really did work as a religious worker, and your intention was not to circumvent the laws of the United States while you apply for a green card. The good thing about religious workers is you don't need a labor certification. You don't need anything when you apply for a green card, just to show the fact that you have continued to be in that religious denomination and you have done your duty, but then you preached in your temple, in your church, whatnot, and people are coming to your congregation. Those are very important things that need to be proved when you are applying for a green card, because immigration is really going to look at your complete history in the United States, whether you did actually perform the duties of a religious worker when you came to the United States of America. So Onmeow is raising their hands. So we're going to take some questions. And as I said, you can put the questions on the chat board. So you can start chatting with me. And Onmeow Cheng, can I have your question, please? And where are you calling from? Hello? On? Hello? Please turn on your volume if you want to speak to me.
She left the room temporarily. She'll be back in a minute.
I'm sorry?
She left the room temporarily. She'll be back in a minute.
All right, not a problem. So we'll continue with the show until she's back. So you've got to raise your hand. When the person comes back, I'll be happy to help you, answer your question here. So folks, we have to kind of basically understand that religious workers is a very important category. And I'm going to just type some message here. The show is live and you can ask your questions at the stage. So you have Dave who wants a question here. Yes, Dave. How may I help you? Hello? Okay, I request people to turn on their mics, their microphones if they have a question to ask. Well, what's happening that we get this message, but yes. Yes, Onmeow Cheng.
Yes, hi, Gehi. I'm your client. I reopened the case, and
I think since you're a client, can you call me or can you send me an email so I can call you tomorrow?
Okay.
All right, because just to maintain your confidentiality, it's better for you to send us an email at info@gaylaw.com.
Okay.
And hope you're doing well. Your family is good.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure hearing from you, own man.
Yeah. So, what is your email?
info@gaylaw.com.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Okay. Thank you.
So, folks, if you're an existing client, send us an email. Due to confidentiality reasons, we cannot discuss the issues live, on those shows. So, if you have any other questions, if there's anyone else who has a question, they can ask us. Or besides that, others, we're going to make sure. And I'm so sorry I apologize about today's show because Zoom had some issues. So we had to cut it short and we started it again. So if there are any other questions, Dave had a question. So Dave, you can ask us your question, or you can basically, as I said, email us at any time at info@gaylaw.com. And we are resuming fully. Our operations are going to begin. They're going to begin next week. So even this week, we are taking limited kind of appointments. And Harry, can you text us your question, please?
So should I text or I can call now?
Yeah, you can call right now. That's fine. I'm glad that you have your mic on.
Okay. The thing is, did this show start early? I think it's supposed to be at 6:30, right?
Yeah, but the times have been changed because exactly we've been allowed to go back to work now.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anyway, so my question is, I am in H-1B visa and my wife is in H-4 visa. And my employer filed a green card for me. We got the EAD based on pending I-485, both my and me both. And still I-140 and I-485 both are pending. So since I will be working in the office in my H-1B status, I will never use that EAD. But what happens if my wife uses that EAD? Does she lose her H-4 status or anything happens if I-140 gets denied later?
Actually, the smarter thing this is what I recommend people. I tell them to go on their, in your case, my 2 cents, I'm not a lawyer, but this is general advice from my end. You should actually be taking your EAD over here. And if it gets denied, you can still get back to your H-1B. Because you have 1 month to appeal.
No, I'm not
Maybe-
using my EAD. I'm fine. I'm fine with my H1B, but
I do understand that.
my
But you
wife.
said you have an EAD right now at the stage. Am I correct?
Yeah, I have, but I'm not using that EAD because I have H1B status and I don't want to
So
use.
this means if you are not using it, then legally, if you're considering that, then your wife is on an H4.
Yeah, so can my wife use that I-485 EAD? I will be maintaining my status H1B.
Not a good idea until you use it.
Oh, okay. So no, I'm not using until I get the green card because I don't want to use my.
So then my thing is not a good idea.
Oh, okay.
Because
So,
under the law, you're telling immigration that you're on an H1 year
right.
and you're not using it. So then your wife can only work on an H4 EAD.
Oh, okay. So she can't use that I-485 EAD.
I would not recommend that. I would apply for the H4 EAD if she is eligible for that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, my I-140 is still pending. So
I'm very particular when I talk. I'm very kind of conservative with my approach because
Oh, okay.
immigration is always looking at a way of denying
right.
cases these days.
Right.
So to be on the conservative side, the
Uh-huh.
smarter approach for you would be go on an H4 EAD. But you've already been here for 6 years, I believe.
No, it's my second year actually.
Second year. So that's good. Which country are you from?
I'm from Nepal.
Oh, you're very lucky.
Yeah, I mean, at least our priority date is correct.
That is correct. So that's pretty much good. And that's what I would do if I were you.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right. Okay.
Thanks. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
your
much.
suggestion. Mhm.
Yes. So that's how I believe things have to be. And if you have any other questions, folks, you can ask us the questions. We'll be happy to kind of. Now, Justin Norris, I live in Mexico and my family is in detention in Texas. How can we get them out and how can we get me into America? I own a bar here in Mexico and I have a bachelor's degree. So first thing is that, Justin, your family that is detained, you need to look at the fact whether a bond was applied or what is the outcome of the detention order. That's number one. Or secondly, if they applied for political asylum, whether exactly it was granted, it was denied. That's exactly about your family. Now, as far as you are concerned, I would need some more details because you seem to be having decent qualifications and you have a bar. And if a bar is doing very well, then you may have an option over here to start your business under the L1 category, or I may have to see exactly what else we can do for you. So your best bet would be to send me an email at info@gayilaw.com. I'm going to type it here. Please send an email. You can email us at info@gayilaw.com and we'll be happy to kind of review matter and let you know what we can do about your situation. So that is very important. And thanks. How much time it will take and cost for a religious visa. So I cannot tell you about the cost, but what you can do is if you can send me your information, your biodata, or if you can email me, I can call you and we can discuss about the religious visa. This is the answer to Matthew's question. So Matthew, you can email us at info@same thing, or you can call us tomorrow at 718-764-6911 and ask for Kim. So once if you speak to Kimberly, I'll be happy to take the call and I can discuss. Oh, I'm sorry about the number. It's 718-764-6911. My apologies for the number. That was an error. So that's what we can do. This is the answer to Matthew's question. So if you have any more questions, I'll be happy to take them. If anyone else wants to come up and talk to us, we'll be happy to kind of, discuss the questions further. So we have, I'm in Hong Kong. I would like to leave because of, yes, we've been working with a lot of people from Hong Kong. We've been advising you. So Ming, please do email me and I can, what I can do, Ming, is that we can have a Zoom meeting and we can figure, I'm very sorry to hear about what's happening in Hong Kong. So Ming, please send me an email. Ming, please email me. So now there's a question over here from, what is the eligibility for a religious visa? We just mentioned that, and we just spoke about the eligibility for the religious worker. So what you folks can do is that you can listen to this video again, and we mentioned it very clearly. So, Arun, you can review this video on Facebook and YouTube. So after this video finishes, you can review it, and it's going to tell you everything that you need to know about religious workers. So we had a long discussion, basically you should be a member, of the clergy, or you need to be a priest. And plus you should have worked in the religious denomination for more than 2 years. And you need to be sponsored by a church in the United States that is a part of the same denomination. And your duty should be 100% religious in nature. And, you need to show proof that you are a member of the clergy, a priest, or a pastor, or a pundit, or a mullah. That's very, very important. Or basically, you can also show that you are doing a lot of work within the religious kind of sphere. For example, you're a cook in a gurudwara, and that is a part of the religion that he has to do it. So those things are acceptable at times. So folks, I think we've spoken enough, and the show timings have changed. It's at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I think we're going to change the background. It's going to be on every Wednesday at 6 p.m. So keep watching the show live with Attorney Gay, and next week we need to change the banner. We need to make sure that we'll be on at 6 p.m. every Wednesday Eastern Standard Time to take your questions. The instant program constitutes an attorney advertisement under the laws of the state of New York, and prior results do not guarantee future outcome. The information contained in this seminar is general in nature and does not apply to any sort of specific circumstances unless and until an attorney-client relationship is entered into between the parties. Thank you for watching. Next week, same time, same place, and we are going to talk about the E1 and the E2 visa again, especially complicated issues in E1 and in the E2 visa. And plus, we're going to talk about how to sponsor your spouse who is living abroad. Sponsoring your spouse is the topic for next week's visa, who is living abroad. Sponsoring your spouse for a green card or for a fiancé visa who is living in a foreign country. Only with Attorney Gehi on Gehi with Green Card.